All right, we're on chapter 4, 3. Um, we're according to the notes, we're about to take a nosedive into the esoteric meta zone. But first, here's Riska.
I sure do love Risk.
I want to do Risk.
Okay. We've got Vriska, Terezi, June, Dirk, Jake, Vriska, Terezi, Dirk, Vriska, Jane,
Nice.
Rocky, Calliope.
Calliope?
Calliope
All
at the very end.
Calliope!
Yeah, all
Mine.
Calliope. Yes.
All right,
Oh,
yeah.
Bucky
all
has to
Calliope?
do Dirk. It is contractually mandated.
I'm
Oh, I
legally
can do
obligated to do Dirk. It's in my contract. It's in the Twitch. This is in the Twitch stream rules that you have to read to agree to in the chat. It's not actually. We're gonna add it later, so everybody play along. All right. Okay. Sorry. We've got 4 people. I guess first off, who's gonna narrate? Because like whoever narrates doesn't have to do any of the character voices, I guess. Although Anna, you did narrate the last one, so I don't know.
I just narrated.
Yeah.
I can take Jane.
The Belmonts,
Okay.
maybe, because all Calliope doesn't have a lot of lines, and they don't conflict with the narrator.
That's true.
I do love me one spooky cherub girl and also the narrator.
Nice.
Excellent. And that'll also play well with what happens with the narration, I'm sure. And then I'll do Terezi.
Sure. Terezi and who wants to do Jane? Anna's
Jake.
doing Jane?
Yeah. Anna, do you want to do Jake as well?
I can do Jake too.
I can do June as well, because Vriska stops talking at that point.
Okay, cool. Alright. Red. That's
Nice.
already.
Did it.
Stupidly enough, the first thing you realize is just how many people Vriska accidentally killed in making her grand entrance. Jade is squished against the wall like a bug. Rose ends up impaled on a shard of metal. Dave takes a fireball to the face as a future Dave tackles Carcat out of the way. Roxy lies on the floor, dead for the second time in less than 20 minutes. The only ones unscathed are you, by virtue of some stroke of luck, Kanaya, who simply deflects the debris with her chainsaw, and Terezi, who ends up sitting up on top of the nose of the interloping ship with a dazed look on her face. You also suppose the Dirk Jake situation qualifies as surviving, but really, it's just that nothing can penetrate the hope bubble right now. Vriska cartwheels through the cockpit's windscreen and executes a flawless landing right next to Jane's crumpled form. Another dead person who you managed to overlook. Her hair is disheveled, and her clothes are torn in places. It looks like she's been through one hell of an ordeal. Without even pausing to glance at the multiple people coming back from the grave, she balls her fists and screams.
I'm fucking back, bitches! Rah!
Terezi is so shocked that she topples off of her perch, crashing to the ground with a comical oof. You find yourself staring dumbfounded. Without a doubt, that might be the coolest, most reckless thing you have ever seen.
But Vriska?
Vriska ignores you, stomping across the floor to the front of the room. She passes by Jade's Technicolor Resurrection light show. God, that's such... Without even batting an eye, with a single-minded focus, she approaches the hope bubble, her hair and clothes beginning to ripple as she draws closer to its gravitational field.
Vriska!
You.
She's not talking to Terezi, obviously, but instead to Dirk, who's currently very busy ramming his tongue down Jake's throat as his hands clench English's buttocks. He seems to feel the weight of Cirquet's stare, however, and quickly puts a stop to his weird sloppy PDA session. He pulls away from the kiss, but his hands don't leave Jake's ass cheeks. Immediately, his jaw tightens and his mouth grimaces.
You.
You.
Who?
Jake, please shut the fuck.
Dirk doesn't get to finish, but Vriska steps forwards and breaches the vicinity of the Hope Sphere without so much as flinching. Your mouth is agape. You're pretty sure that isn't meant to be possible? But apparently, Vriska's sheer will is enough to overrule even a god of hope in the prime of his power. Vriska continues forward until she stands exactly 2 feet away from the entwined couple. Dirk and Jake have enough time to share a bewildered look before she reaches forward, grabs the front of Dirk's shirt, and lifts him in the air with one-handed iron grip. Her teeth are bared in an open snarl, and she is quite literally physically radiating the aura of one who is absolutely, categorically fucking furious.
You really thought you could consign me to irrelevance, you 2-bit piece of shit twink.
Oh god, I love that. Jake snaps out of his stupor at that exact moment to reach out and take a step towards Vriska.
Hey, unhand him!
Silence, himbo.
Without even so much as looking at him, Vriska raises her other arm into a fist and clocks Jake English right in the face. Her blow is hard enough that the hope field immediately shorts out, and Jake goes flying headfirst into a pile of machinery. You can hear the crack of bone all the way from here.
Unfortunately, in her blind rage, Vriska has forgotten that while Jake's hope field was shielding us from your attacks, it was likewise the only thing keeping my powers in check. Free of that prison of protection, she is helpless against the vastness of my...
Ah, fuck you.
Vriska delivers an ice-cold bitch slap to Dirk's face that quickly shuts him up. She then proceeds to throw him to the ground with enough force and finesse that the uninitiated would be forgiven for mistaking the maneuver for an atomic double-O juggalo backbreaker. It's basically deadly enough to be a guaranteed kill, and Dirk had surely accrued enough karma to net a just death, but by the virtue of a lucky break, he survives the impact.
Stop fucking with my head, you orange piece of shit.
Dirk tries in vain to stagger to his feet and reach for his unbreakable katana. Vriska picks up the weapon and snaps it over her knee like a cheap piece of shit.
Nobody.
Vriska raises her sneaker and swings her foot right into Dirk's crotch. His poofy plants deflate under the force of her blow, and he screams a register not unlike that of a black hole collapsing into itself.
And I mean nobody.
Dirk swivels to dodge an incoming knee to the solar plexus, eyes bulging with incipient terror. He begins the laborious process of crawling away, but Vriska socks him in the jaw hard enough for a tooth to fly out and land on one of the command terminals lining the room.
Gets to tell me whether or not I matter?
And then Vriska proceeds to beat the living shit out of Dirk Strider. You stand there and watch for an unspecified amount of time as this story's villain is reduced to little more than a pummeled piece of meat and then a shit smear on the pavement. All his plans waylaid by a single troll girl on the warpath. Vriska's really going in there. Like, maybe she's working through several grievances all at once, and Strider here is a convenient punching bag for her righteous fury. Most surprisingly is that all this has transpired while your friends are still in the process of reviving themselves. You consider that maybe the sheer force of Vriska's outrage has the power to center the narrative on her for so long as she damn likes. You don't know. You're mostly transfixed by the one-sided beatdown on display here. The way that Vriska is so effortlessly being Vriska.
Because of you, I fucked a clown. A fucking clown.
Someone should really stop her, you think, as she tears Dirk's cape in half and slams his face into the ground repeatedly. But you continue to stay planted firmly where you are, and also ignore that last thing she said. You ignore it so well that soon you forget Vriska has said anything at all. You could put a stop to this whenever you want, you tell yourself, if not the retcon thing. Then the windy thing would just as easily shut it down. And yet, you're so overwhelmed by Vriska's sheer presence that you can't move. Maybe part of you actually thinks, on an abstract level, this is the coolest shit you've ever seen? Vriska's on a level of self-actualized outburst that you could never hope to attain. You've never been able to deal with your problems through words, let alone fists. Not that you want to suddenly become a violent person. You're feeling envious of the determined confidence that Vriska exudes. You wish you had even a fraction of it. God, this is a weird train of thought. You're more glad when it's interrupted by Terezi sprinting towards the Vriska-shaped maelstrom of rage.
Vriska, stop! We already had this dealt with. He already stopped being the villain. Beating the shit out of him will only make the narrative recognize him as a malevolent entity again.
Terezi grabs Vriska by the shoulders and pulls her away from Dirk. Dirk, having been freed from the tempestuous obliteration and cut off from Vriska's violent momentum, simply flops to the ground in a puddle of his own blood. You don't think he's dead, but he's groaning like he wishes he was. Vriska growls, whipping her head around to face whoever would fucking dare to interrupt her mid-meltdown and give him a taste of her fist. But then she sees just who's holding her and stops dead in her tracks.
Terezi?
Terezi raises her hand in a wave and smiles softer and shyer than you've ever seen her.
Hey, you. Long time no see, huh?
You?
She suddenly looks so small on the floor and seems to shrink further as tears well in her eyes, and she leans into Terezi's embrace. All the tension deflates just like that. You feel a sharp pang of awkwardness at witnessing this highly intimate reunion between the girl you obsessed over throughout your adolescence and the girl you obsessed over throughout your young adulthood, who you also had sex with less than 24 hours ago from your perspective. It's strange because part of you also feels a closeness, a kind of sympathy that makes you feel like you're a part of them, that you get them. But another equally as vocal part tells you that you're being a major fucking creep who can't leave the two girls you're attracted to the hell alone. Shame begins to run over your body like a cloying oil. It's kind of like the longer you bear witness to the scene, the more you feel like you're suffocating on your own breath. So you're immensely relieved when Vriska finally deigns to relinquish the narrative spotlight from her hijinks. You can peel your eyes away from this unreasonably unsettling scene. All at once, you become aware of your friends again, who have now finally been given the textual space to complete their resurrections. Jane is the closest to you, and also the first one up. Her eyes are clear, and she stands firmly on her feet, completely unbothered by the god-tier death-life carousel that plagues the heroically neutral. She blinks twice and puts a hand on her hip.
Ooh, I'll never get over how much dying actually hurts, especially when you're not as spry and in shape as you were the last time you had to run the old mortality gauntlet.
She's seemingly talking to herself and draws her mouth into a neutral line when she finally spots you.
Oh, hello, John. You're back.
Yeah, hi, Jane.
Neither of you sounds particularly thrilled with the encounter. You, because you can't remember the last time you had a conversation with Jane, or about Jane that wasn't one of Dirk's bizarre, esoteric, economic, and political rants, and Jane, likely because of said economic and political situations. She's been frosty ever since she started toying with the idea of having any kind of social power. Like, she simultaneously became alienated from and above you and your friends.
It's good to see you. Between you coming back, Dirk calming down, and those two troll girls, having their moment, I think that's a good sign as any that the last few months' worth of tumult is finally drawn to a close.
I guess so. I mean, I'm here feeling like the
You try to say guy who showed up late to the party, but the words stick in your throat for some reason.
like someone who showed up late to the party. So I'm seeing all these moments of resolution without much context for how we actually got here.
Jane raises an eyebrow. It's a little condescending if you're being honest.
Of course you wouldn't. You've been dead for the majority of this whole series of events.
I'm sorry.
Jane lets out a breath.
No, I'm sorry. Over the span of our voyage up to this moment, I came to realize that I've not exactly been the most ethically compelling character the last few years. I'm trying to work on being a little less of, as Mr. Vontas so eloquently said, megalomaniacal fuckwit with her head shoved firmly up her own chute. So, I apologize for being a little testy.
Jane looks both parts mortified and strained by this path of redemption she's begun to walk down. You wonder if it's the fact she's genuinely remorseful for her more problematic actions, or if it's just her displeasure at having to swallow so much humble pie. For her sake, you hope it's the former.
Hey, it's fine. I never really had that much beef with you in the first place, Jane. I was too busy being depressed to actually care about Ursini's delicate political situation. So I guess you can be uncancelled in my eyes?
You're not sure if it's the right thing to say, but Jane seems earnest in her own weird way. You don't want to inadvertently shut that train of self-discovery down before it even starts. Jane half smiles.
Either way, looks like it's all well that ends well for this particular caper.
Unfortunately, it is not that simple. The prince's plans are embedded in contingencies beyond even his awareness that mean physically stopping him is rather inconsequential. It would not be inappropriate to say that in a sense, he has already succeeded. But not quite.
I like that.